in relation to the previously mentioned degrees of practice intensity, there are three ways of practicing: informal practice, formal practice, and intensive practice. Informal practices relate to practicing mindfulness techniques while we're going through our day. They refer to bringing awareness to our breath, emotions, the practice of compassion, all these things, just while we're doing our daily stuff. Informal practices are very important because they help solidify our understanding of mindfulness. Formal practices are the practices we engage in when setting aside periods of time during the day to actually stop and just engage in mindfulness practices without any distraction, such as formal sitting meditation or intensive practices refer to participating into actual meditation retreats for 1 day to 10, 15, 30, 40 days, in which our sole purpose is to dwell deeper into mindfulness and the investigation of ourselves. And if used consistently and properly, mindfulness techniques will give the client and will give the student the understanding based on real experiential knowledge that their minds are not that important. They are a tool, they're a wonderful tool, but they are not the driver. They, the person, ourselves, the one who are practicing, we are the drivers, and that gives us an understanding that can lead to psychological health. So the mindfulness framework is at the core of all spiritual traditions, of all esoteric paths. Esoteric meaning inside doctrine, as opposed to exoteric, which means outside doctrine, which we'll discuss in another video, and relates to religion. At the foundation of all spiritual paths, we find the same foundations of mindfulness: unconditional acceptance and love, awareness, and the teachings that we have a mind, but we're not a mind. In my years living in meditation schools and monasteries in Asia, I became more and more aware of the importance of merging psychology and spirituality, and it puzzled me how some called spiritual teachers have more than 20 Rolls Royce, and how other teachers were having coercive sex with so many of their students. And I also saw how friends and teachers of mine had psychological issues such as addiction to sex and domestic abuse tendencies, and how they were not able to heal these problems through the use of only one kind of meditation. They could avoid their problems, but they could not heal them. And I later realized how the key to treat psychological well-being was to actually bring the archetypical mindfulness techniques throughout the day, and I realized how the Western take on mindfulness as a psychological approach had accomplished bringing together the strengths of both spirituality and psychology. And in my search to bring together spirituality and psychology, I also came across Ken Wilber and David Hawkins, which later I consider my main spiritual teacher, and which helped me to comprehend that people with deep mystical experiences are not necessarily psychologically healthy. Another thing that I love that Ken Wilber says is that in terms of self-development, if you have time for only one thing, meditate. If you have time for two things, work on your shadow self, psychotherapy, and meditate. And if you have time for three things, then meditate, work on your shadow self, and exercise. And the beautiful thing I found in mindfulness, it's really able to use those two techniques, the first and second techniques together of meditation and psychological work into one, which I have not seen successfully attended to in Eastern traditions. So the beauty I see in mindfulness is that it has been able to bridge the gap between spiritual development and psychological health by looking at psychological concepts through the lens of meditation, specifically how it took Buddhist philosophy and applied it to psychology. Another beautiful thing is that mindfulness can be as secular or as spiritual as the client or student feels comfortable with, and will bring him or her to psychological health, regardless of their level of secularism or spirituality. Even though, just like the Zen koan states intended to buy iron, they obtain gold, people who approach mindfulness in order to reduce their stress levels, better their marriage, gain concentration, will gain so much more by these simple techniques. They will obtain gold, intending to buy iron. Another fascinating thing is that since mindfulness came to psychotherapy in the 1970s, and psychology has been around for a century, Mindfulness was not naive enough to pretend it could cure everything. So imprinted at its core is a belief that techniques from other traditions and psychological theories are more than accepted and play an important role in mindfulness training, and are used when necessary. The only guideline is that such techniques should be used in the spirit of being aware of whatever is arising inside of oneself when doing such practices, and which is also one of the reasons why mindfulness practices are considered the evolution of CBT. Mindfulness, inspired in ancient spiritual practices rooted in Buddhism, has touched the West in such a fascinating and healing way. Mindfulness entails being aware of the present moment, no matter how uncomfortable it can be, and realizing we're not the uncomfortableness, nor the state will last forever. I don't think that Buddha would be very surprised that now in the 21st century, we're using his techniques with psychology for psychological well-being, since his techniques and his teachings from the beginning were merging both psychology and spirituality together.